Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello from wherever you're watching us. My name is Gechi, and we are from Crescendo Ministries. You are watching Heal. Heal is a podcast. Heal means having emotional anguish lifted. And today we are doing part two. You should watch part one if you haven't. We're doing part two of the conversation. We started on depression, anxiety, and suicide. I want to caution that some of the material here may be a bit sensitive. So if there are children watching, this might be a good time to figure out if they should continue watching. Otherwise, we're going to have some just conversations. I want to also say that we're not specialists. So what we're having here is a conversation because we just want to address a trend that is that we've noticed. I'm not alone. I'm here with my team, and we're just going to introduce ourselves from that end.
My name is H.E.A.L. I'm a 19-year-old student.
Hi, my name is Ian. I'm a 27-year-old technical support and QA engineer at a software company.
I shouldn't be laughing.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm very old.
I'm not saying how old I am, but hello.
And hi, my name is Sandy.
Hi, my name is Shalakwe. I'm a 21-year-old fourth-year medical student.
So that's a interesting range of people you're going to hear from today. We have Reverend Chris here to help us sort of tie a ribbon on the thoughts on the conversation on each segment of the conversations. And to start us off, who's going to start us off for this episode? Who wants to start us off?
I think that'll be me.
Okay, go ahead. So Ian's going to kick us off.
Yeah, so I believe in part one, again, if you haven't seen that, I think you should catch up. In part one, we spoke about how anxiety, this state of unease and nervousness about something with an uncertain outcome is a deep and personal feeling. And I think it goes without saying that as young adults growing up, we experience a lot of ambivalence at that stage in our lives. You know, you're facing academic pressure, you're facing like changes in your relationships, you're also facing changes in your career trajectory, all right? You're planning towards your future, you're thinking about and also progressing towards like this desire for success. There's so many things you want to see happen in your life, right? So in the midst of all this ambivalence, it goes without saying that you would definitely feel some level or form of stress. So my first question to the floor, and I think I'll start with the young adults with us today, H.E.A.L and Shalape, is that how have you in your day-to-day distinguished between, you know, the ordinary stress that you experience and anxiety? Do you feel that, do you think that on a day-to-day basis you face regular stress more so than anxiety, or you believe that anxiety tends to take the center stage of every fearful moment or experience you have?
I'd like to say for me, I do go through stress, quite a little bit too habitual, but it's different from anxiety. But anxiety does come around during certain seasons. Like, so right now, it's during exam season.
Yeah.
I tend to face anxiety more often because I'm like, I can't control the exams. Like, how is it going to go? I'm worried. Before even going to the paper, I'm worried, am I going to pass? Am I going to do well? That's where anxiety comes from. But I still go through like day-to-day stress on how to do work. Like sometimes the amount of work that we have to do is a lot. So that time I go through the normal stress. But during like exams, time to move out, time to move into new accommodation, that level of anxiety comes through. So, yeah, that's what I say.
I agree with your point in the sense that anxiety can be seasonal. I think another thing for me is just in terms of stress and anxiety. With anxiety, there is more of a physical manifestation. So I will feel like my chest beating. I will feel palpitations. I will have a headache. So me personally, and everyone's different, but I have physical symptoms when it's more severe than an everyday level stress. And also like another way to determine how severe my anxiety is like how long these symptoms are lasting for. Stress is a part of everyday life, but
Right.
I normally find that it doesn't affect my daily functioning.
Right.
Whereas if I'm having a constant headache, then I'm not able to concentrate at school, and then it just kind of deteriorates from there. So I'll say another way to distinguish from like everyday stress and anxiety is the degree of physical manifestations. Like, are you experiencing palpitations? Do you have a headache? Do you feel like you can't get up out of bed? Do you feel like you can't eat? So yeah, that's another difference I would say.
That's awesome. Reverend, would like to hear your thoughts on this as well.
I was just thinking about it whilst you were talking, and I was thinking, could it be that this world of perfection, where everybody puts a perfect picture, a brush it, a meal, perfect, looks nice, put it on social media, it sort of adds to the anxiety because everybody wants to be perfect. Everybody wants to show their best bit. And when you can't show your best bit, then you become anxious, and you become stressed because you want to be perfect all the time. Maybe my generation, we're allowed to fail. We're allowed, when I say allowed to fail, you're allowed to be you. You're allowed not to be perfect. I mean, if you take a picture, we don't have any airbrush in there or whatever. It is what it is. A Polaroid picture.
It is what it is.
It comes out the way it comes out, and everybody's
That's a good
fine.
point. That's a very good
Do you
point.
understand?
You
But
take it as it is right there.
In this day and age, you take a picture, you spend whatever amount of time editing, brushing it, putting more light, because you want to show the best, your best bit and everything. It adds to stress. So people are not allowed to live normal lives. People are putting too much stress on themselves because you don't allow yourself to fail. You don't allow yourself to be you. You want to become something that you are not, and that creates a lot of anxiety. And I'm like, tone it down. It's okay if you're not the most perfect. It's okay if you don't get the best. Tomorrow you have the opportunity to do better. So allow yourself the time to recover, the time to be you, and don't put too much stress on yourself. I mean, working with a lot of young people, I realize a lot of them, I want you to read, or I want you to present, or I want you to sing. No, I can't do it because I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to ace it, so I'm not going to try at all. And I find that all the time, and I'm like, just do it, just attempt it. How else would you get better? And unless you try and fail at it, fail forward, fail at the thing and do it again, become better at it. But young adults, from where I'm coming from, they rather not try.
Society isn't giving room for failure, though. Society isn't allowing you to do take two. It's saying, get it right now, or, you're canceled.
But who brought that that statement out?
Sometimes it's self-inflicted.
I think so. Because I'm like, try it.
I don't feel like you're the voice of the majority.
I'm not.
Because I think I'm thinking about parents out there, or even I'm not sure anybody's saying take it easy, do it better next time. A lot of parents are saying, I didn't pay all that money.
Yeah.
For you, look.
Yeah, but there must be a voice of reason at some point, because the anxiety level is growing. It's mad in this younger generation, because the parents are putting a lot of pressure. Like I say to my kids, I can never stand anywhere and tell you I was first all the time. That would be a bold-faced lie. Because I was not. I was not the best. I was not the most clever. No, I was not. But look at me. I did the best I could with what I had. So just do your best. And I feel that works better, because if you don't put too much expectation on the kids, they do better.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is really valid in terms of like external pressure contributing to anxiety. But something that I've noticed is with social media, oftentimes people already have an intrinsic insecurity,
Right.
and then when you come on social media, it just exacerbates that because you're seeing your ideal self constantly, and where there's such a huge gap between like where you are now and your ideal self, it breeds anxiety.
Absolutely.
So I feel like oftentimes, like especially in this adolescent age group, as you're developing and you're like understanding your identity, there's insecurities that can come out of that, and in terms of that self-discovery and self-development. And it's just sad because obviously it's exacerbated on social media, but it's unfair and unrealistic standards, and people don't have this voice of this is not realistic. People don't have the protective factors of people speaking life into them, having a community and things like that. So I think as much as it's external pressure, it can just be an exacerbation or manifestation of things that you're insecure about within yourself as well.
Yeah, we're talking about in the first episode that in this day and age with social media, young people are more reclusive. They don't talk as much as my generation. We didn't have social media. We didn't have internet. We didn't even have a phone.
It wasn't smart anyway.
My generation, we didn't have a phone. Nobody had a phone. The only phone was in the post office. On the landline at home. Yeah. So there was talking.
Yeah.
So we could talk. This day and age is like you're saying, social media gives us a window to the world. So we have a lot of information, but we don't let out what is inside. Yeah. So it builds in us more than us letting go. And that is where anxiety, just breeds and makes us feel that you want to be the best all the time. Yeah. You can't be the best all the time.
No, you can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a place like this, a church like this always helps because it makes you know that you can become who you want to become. Yeah. You're allowed to try and get it wrong, do it again, and become better.
Yeah.
I should add that we are from Calvary International Christian Center. We have branches in quite a few places: Manchester, Hull, Bradford, Dewsbury, Sheffield, Ghana, Accra, South Africa. So we are a church, but this aspect of the church is Chrisandoh Ministries. I just wanted to add that in, just in case I didn't mention it. Sorry, Ian, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
Interject.
I think it's a good point for us to segue into this next question, which is about the ways in which the church can help in fostering resilience within its young adult community. Because I think we also touched on this in part one, that the church has a duty and a responsibility, a fiduciary duty to it's the people who fellowship within it, its makeup. Right. So in what ways do you think, Reverend, that the church can go forward in paving a way for, safeguards and the proper methods and mechanisms in ensuring that, in as much as our congregation, experiences these issues, we are proactively treating them and giving them the necessary duty of care?
Well, there are three ways to look at it. We, as a church, we are failing. When I say church, I'm talking about the whole body of Christ. Church, we are failing in that we also airbrush our presentation and makes everybody feel that we have to be perfect and everything. And if you don't belong to like little ministries within the church and little arms of them, you don't see the workings, the trying and failing and all those type of things. On Sunday, you get the best take. Do you get it? So it's like everybody's dressed well, everybody's presenting well, everybody looks well. So it sort of adds to the whole perfect scenario. Yeah. But when you're on Wednesday, on Friday and everything, you see that no, we are all not
good.
So I would say that belonging to a little chapel or a little ministry within the church helps, because then that's where we become ourselves. That's where you see that there's room for all of us to grow and improve. Anxiety is when you don't allow yourself, room to fail. You don't allow yourself room to to grow into, then you just feel like you are judging yourself and you feel like you're failing already. And that's where anxiety starts.
All right, that's awesome. I do have a follow-up to that on that too, Yao and Shalape. Do you feel like you've been given, or do you feel comfortable in raising these kind of issues with your leaders and your chapels, your ministries within your respective churches? So, because obviously, Yao, you fellowship with me in Manchester, we normally talk about school and just life in general, but we haven't necessarily had that kind of conversation. That's not to say that perhaps you're not experiencing it, but I just want to add some color and nuance to this conversation. How comfortable do you think you would be in having these kind of conversations around navigating anxious circumstances?
If I'm going to be honest, it's easier to go to somebody that's like, in terms of much closer to you, sometimes age-wise, and take it just in the church. Because background-wise, we see like the pastors as very important. You don't want to take your little issues to the pastor straight away. So
sad.
you want somebody else who is not a pastor that you can go to, and if that person thinks it's severe enough, then he might refer you to the pastor to go and speak to you. So that's why I think so. I think in churches, like what Pastor was saying, it's good if you have those smaller groups where you feel more free to talk in those circles. And if the issue is severe, then those leaders or cell leaders could take you to the pastor and have you have a conversation with him.
Well, it's unfortunate that you say that. I know what you're saying is true, but it's unfortunate. I like to think that the pastor should be so approachable that anybody can just...
That's the ideal, though.
And sometimes I arrange meetings with people just to say, hey, what's up? How are you feeling? It's difficult because with the number of people and number of meetings, it becomes difficult to do that. But sometimes it's okay to say, hey, Pastor, I'm struggling. Do you get it? And just, outside we say hello. It's like, hello.
How are you? And
How are
that's
you?
it.
And that's it.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And hello doesn't mean, or how are you doesn't mean, oh, just hello. No. Say, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
That will give me enough cue to say, listen, let's arrange a meeting. I need to have a chat with you, proper chat, so we can talk. It's not because you are going through, I don't know. If you don't bring it up, it becomes difficult. And if you see me as the highest, something not in your age bracket, can't appreciate what you're saying, it becomes difficult for you to even think of sharing it. But that's unfortunate. That shouldn't be the case. I'd rather you came and say, hey, I said something the last time that you picked up on that. I'm not your dad. You can come talk to me anytime. Don't see me out. Because young people don't like sharing things with their parents because they will not understand.
Or they feel like their parents will understand. And that's the thing, isn't it?
Or you don't realize that we've been through where you are
We've been
now.
there. No, we've been there. I think, I don't know, did you want to say something? Because I feel like you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So to answer your question, yes, there are people in CICC that I feel comfortable. Like if I was having a breakdown, and when I have had breakdowns, I'm spoiled for choice in terms of people I can go to.
That's a good problem.
Which is great. But those relationships have been cultivated over time. Yeah. In other words, in my first month of being in CICC, I would not open my mouth to speak to anyone about that. And I think as a church, we have to just allow the space for people to develop their own trust and to develop their own comfortability to open up. So there's an element of time involved in that. And I completely agree, like in terms of hierarchy, in terms of like titles in the church, probably wouldn't go straight to you, Reverend. Not that I don't think you would be open to, but it's just the perception that I have in terms of how you'd be able to relate or contribute. Now, I think there's another aspect. So there's because you can feel comfortable to open up to someone, but then it's another thing to actually open up to someone. So I think for me, even with all the people that I do feel comfortable to open up to, I may not open up to them until I'm really I'm on my last legs. And that's more of an internal thing. if you've had trust issues in the past of betrayal. So I think just to add into this discussion, the church should also be patient in allowing people to get to a point where they want to open up, because feeling like pressure to open up can also have the opposite
Negatively,
effect as well. So,
That's a good point. And I think that pressure can actually lead to where we're
pressure.
going to more pressure. And then we're getting into the point of depression, because at a
Yeah.
point it's like, I don't know what to do. And then you just kind of like hide in the corner. So I think you're going to talk us through
A
that.
bit about depression. So we all know that, or some of us know that depression is a serious mental illness, and it can also be expressed in different variation of depression. So it could be just low mood, like lack of energy, those type of things that just sucks in. And then we spoke about earlier in our first episode about how faith influence how we understand depression. So my question to you guys is that, have you ever experienced depression, and what were the signs for you to notice that actually this is depression, and did you seek advice, and what did you do with that?
Not necessarily face depression, but it's been close. So to me, depression is like when you don't live up to your expectations, you start to doubt yourself, and you slowly get in there. So if you've been like an A-star student ever through and you forget your first fail, that hits so hard.
Right.
Then you forget all the A-stars you've had.
Facts. That's a fact.
You forget all the A-stars you've had, and you focus on that one fail.
Pressure.
Yeah.
You start to question yourself, am I actually a good student, or was I just lucky the entirety of the time I was getting an A-star?
That's a good point.
So-
That's a good point.
That was kind of my part, because like doing so well, had one or two. Like, wait, was I just lucky those times, or was I really good?
You start to question
So you
yourself.
start questioning yourself, start questioning your abilities, and you just need somebody during that time to tell you, you were that good.
Yeah.
It's just one or two.
Exactly.
It's just that problem. That's what I feel.
I agree. I think it's hard to tell, like to say what you think the signs are, because for me and a lot of people, you won't know I'm depressed unless I want you to know I'm depressed. In other words, there won't, like, if I don't want there to be any physical signs, there won't be, because I can perform to a certain extent in terms of what I want you to see of me. Now, what I will say is I completely agree. I think for me, the first signs of, I have experienced depression before, and the first signs is my thought pattern. Like, I just find myself in negative cycles. And a way to tell is a lot of people use humor as a coping mechanism, but humor can also be a trauma response. So, and like, there are some jokes that I'll be hearing, like, especially in our Nigerian community, like, oh, I'll just go and jump into a river, or I'll just go and do this. And it's like, okay, to what extent is this a joke, or to what extent is this a manifestation of negative thoughts that have been breeding for so long? So I think humor is one, because the thing about comedy, I think Minister Joel was saying, like, the funny thing about comedy is sometimes it's true. So if you pick up something from a friend that just doesn't quite land right, then that's something to not ignore, I would say. But it's really hard to say what the signs are. I mean, I could list so many, like social withdrawal, not eating, not sleeping. But again, it's either it's in its really last stages, or it's either someone wants to show those signs. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. But so how easy is it for us to identify some signs, so that if you know the people that are in your life are going through them type of emotions, what kind of way, how can we identify that? What would you say?
I think so if you know people that are in your life, so your friends and your family, you kind of know what's a baseline for them. You kind of know what's a norm for them. So anything that deviates from that norm, either way, so sleep. So if someone, like, let's say, normally sleeps 7 hours, but they're sleeping for 12 hours, or they're sleeping for 2 hours, like, on either side of that norm is enough to question or probe. Or have a concern. So I would say, if you want me to just list things, I'd say sleep, eating. If they had certain hobbies that they love doing, all of a sudden, oh, why aren't you coming to choir practice anymore? Or like, oh, I thought you were supposed to be going to a football match tomorrow, type of thing.
So you're
And
saying,
also-
are you saying those are the markers of
Disturbance
look-
of day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but also sometimes if someone has gone through a traumatic event, that is already a predisposing factor for depression. So you can be proactive in helping someone navigate through that. So it's not just only about the signs, but if you know that, you know, this person has gone through grief or this person has struggled with eating disorders, that's already, you don't need to wait for the signs to manifest because you can help them in that process. Yeah.
Cool.
I know from what you're saying, I'm not going to mention any names, but this young lady lost a grandma, and but I noticed that the energy was extra.
Yeah.
And I thought, no. So,
Just coping.
so just to one side, like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Are you getting on with grandmas? Then
Yeah.
started going,
Floodgates.
it's like, oh, okay, this is... So, young people know how to mask things.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes you got to be a little bit sensitive to know that something is going on.
Something's up.
And if they are reclusive, they are not like coming out, then it becomes difficult. Because if I don't see you, sometimes somebody doesn't come to church for however many weeks. Like, hey, what's going on?
Right.
And it's like, when you probe a little further, you realize they've gone through something and they just felt it was better to hide away rather than coming to church for people to know and even help.
Yeah.
So it's difficult.
It really is. And I think as a church, what are we doing in terms of reaching out to people? For example, if someone has not come to church for a number of weeks, do we have like those
should we
people
have things in place
to check on those people? Because of course, like within church, people may be hurt for one or two reasons and then they would draw back, and that would push them into depression.
Most of the time it has nothing to do with church, as it could be whatever is going on in their lives. What we normally do is, I'm sure to a large extent, most churches do it, but when the church becomes overly big, it becomes difficult. You know, but if the person is, a member of a smaller, cell group within the church, then it's easier to pick up that person X hasn't been to church for a while. But if you have a church, 200-300 people, how do you pick up
who has not come,
who hasn't been, you know? So it becomes difficult. But then occasionally we go through, it's like, oh, what's going on? I haven't seen A, B, C, D, what's happening? Then we get somebody to, get in touch and then see what's going on.
I think another thing that CICC does really good, and like you don't really appreciate it until you start serving, because CICC is the first time that I've ever served in church, and like in Ignite we are trained to have like the 99 and 1 mindset. So if like there was 50 people at Ignite one day and next week there was like 100 people, but you noticed that there wasn't one person there, the fact that there was more people wouldn't take away from the importance that one person wasn't there. And so I think in like church, in terms of, can you call it training or the discipling of people who are serving in church, letting them have that mindset that every sheep is important is something that I've really appreciated from serving and been on the receiving end of as well. So
Yeah, I don't know if you want to add something else to this particular question.
All I can say for the sciences is only the people close to you that are going to realize it. So the people very close to you. So whoever you're close to, be nice and remember to check on them. It might be, depends on the relationship, but for some people it might be every day. Others is every 2 days, others is every week, every month, but just do your best. And whenever the person comes to mind,
that's right.
Don't put it to a further
I agree.
date.
I agree.
When the person comes to mind, if you
Just
can't call at that
send a
moment,
text.
just send a text.
I absolutely agree.
Just checking up on you.
I think we're all in agreement about that.
That's
It's such a key thing, and it's a small thing, but it makes the big. Even the person you're sending the they'll be like, oh my gosh, because they didn't know how to reach out to you to say, I'm drowning. But seeing that text, it does a lot. Words, it's that kind of words of affirmation kind of thing. Like, I'm thinking of you. You'll help this. I think that we as a church, as a body of Christ, we just really have to do better at that. I think that'll make a big difference. I don't know, you guys and I think with the age group that we're thinking about, the young adults, the young professionals, I'm thinking that will make that much of a difference, because I think you're at that age, that stage in your life where you're independent minded, but you still need a little bit, you still need a backing, you need some support, you need some, you need some encouragement, you need some push. And you also don't want to look like you failed. So while you don't know how to ask, right? Because that's the other bit, isn't it? Is that I didn't know how to ask, so I kept quiet. And the first thing somebody's going to say is, why didn't you say something? Why did you say something? I couldn't say something. And I think we're going to just segue from not being able to say something into it's now getting too late. We're getting to the place of my mind is moving to regions and places that it shouldn't. We're thinking dark thoughts. We're thinking painful thoughts. We're thinking finality. We're thinking suicide. We're thinking, I'm tired. Let's get done with this now. I just want to read something that research shows that with appropriate early intervention and support, suicide by young people can be prevented. Intervention, early intervention, and support. It's the support I'm talking about. It's I haven't seen this person. If you don't have their contact number, if you don't have their contact details, tell somebody, ask somebody else, hey, have you noticed that this person, do you know what I'm saying? Like, have you noticed this person is kind of absent, or have you noticed they've changed, or why is this person, why are you losing weight? Why, do you know, like I ask the questions, because we never know at what point that it became too late. So I want to ask both y'all, first of all, we often seek, validation from people, in our lives and, through our accomplishments. So because you've A-star all this while and you just feel like that validates me, I'm this, So what role would you say that seeking validation is playing in the rate of suicide, in the increased rate of suicide? I think in our previous episode, I mentioned some statistics that are quite painful, but the truth, I think I said that an average of 5 young people take their lives each day. That's a lot of lives lost. So back to the question, what role would you say that seeking validation is sort of playing, or what do you think about the concept of validation and suicide?
I think for suicide, that's my personal feeling. I think the idea is they go unnoticed. The person feels he goes unnoticed. So the whole idea is, if the person feels that life is not important, or like nobody cares, or they don't make a significant impact into the world or in their small circle, they feel, okay, I'm not needed, I'm negligible, I can leave. So seeking validation is the whole idea of, I want somebody to say I am worth it. I'm supposed to be here. Oh, the work I do for them is so valuable to them that they want me around. So when you don't receive that validation that you want, then you start to question again. You start to question yourself. Okay, do my parents love me? No. Okay, do my friends want me around? Always they're going out, they exclude me. Nobody has ever called to check how is he out doing? Where has he been? So you start to feel, okay, nobody cares about me, nobody thinks I'm important. Then what does the world need me for? I might as well just leave. That's when they feel. That's how I feel. That's when.
Do you have any personal experience with that, or have you seen somebody? Do you know somebody?
Me personally, no. But the reason I pointed out calling the person when it came to mind was, for mine, it was a friend.
Okay.
So I hadn't heard from the person for a little bit longer than usual. And for a while, the person kept on coming to mind, okay, H.E.A.L, just call. So I called, I was like, how you doing? It's been a while I've heard from you. It's like, first, she didn't want to talk. She was like, nothing. It's like, I'm just busy with school. Like, I know you're busy with school, but before you were able to talk, able to see what's going on. So, but I didn't want to push further, so I just ended the call. Like, call you later. Called her. So the next day I was like, no. She came to mind again. I called her. another point, she was like, okay, this guy's gonna be. I know because we are close friends. So
Right.
I can't do that to anybody, just a random person. But we are close friends. So like, he knows I've known you for a while, so she knows what's going on. So she starts to explain what's going on. Like, I'm thinking about it. I'm just going. I started telling her that no, you're worth it. Then you have to mind the person of like.
That's good.
You have to mind the person of times where you guys would be like,
That's awesome.
from school. These people know you. I don't want to be the person to call and say whatever's happened to you. And I wouldn't want. And I told her that now that you told me, if you don't think you're weird, just think that to me you are. And I don't want to be the person to tell somebody else that I knew this before. This was happening. So I think you're worth it for my sake. And also for the sake of all these people around who also think you're worth it, just
Hang in
stay.
there.
And she was like, she's gonna keep going. So now it's a constant call.
That's good.
Checking up.
That's very good. Yeah. What about
I
you?
think that was really, really well articulated. And the thing is, with suicide, so suicide like is not like a desire for death per se. It's just an escape from pain. So for someone to have like to want to escape pain, it means that their self-worth must be really, really low. And you don't really get to that depth quickly. Like it takes years of building up.
That's a good point.
And people also validating that lack of self-worth. If you're having voices or if you're on social media that is reinforcing
Social
these
media.
thoughts that you're not good looking or you're not smart or that, you know, you don't have it builds up. So what's my point that I'm trying to make? So I agree. Self-validation, seeking validation points to like a lack of self-worth. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not acute, like it builds up over time. And oftentimes people will hear things or see things that reinforces those thoughts unless like the cycle is broken and they have that voice that can take them out like you did with your friend and things like that.
Do you have experience with needing validation or experience with where not having enough of it has affected your emotional stability, for lack of a better word?
Yes. Yes. I think it points to being uncertain in my identity. So like in certain periods of my life where I'm uncertain of my identity, I will identify myself with my academic successes. And then when those things that used to give me stability is gone, I'm now in a place of limbo type of thing. Sorry, what was your question?
So I'm just asking. So what do you have experience with needing, and seeking validation, before and did that take you down a dark place or?
Yeah, it did take me down a dark place because the places that I was seeking validation from weren't really good sources. Like I was seeking validation from things that can easily go. So like people can disappoint. You can seek validation from friends, but they can disappoint you. You can seek validation from your academic studies and then you can fail. So I feel like another thing that exacerbates like the lack of self-worth is just seeking validation from the wrong things. When people have these negative self-worth or thoughts of negative low self-esteem, things like alcohol is so accessible, things like smoking, things like weed is so accessible, and that is a form of self-medication that can kind of almost drown out those negative self-thoughts, but obviously that just leads you down a dark hole. So I think another thing is where you're seeking that validation from and the things that you're doing to process or cope with those feelings of low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I don't know, but for our African setting, most of the time, part of the banter at home is to always pick on you, pick on the kids. You're so mouthy, you're so ugly. You don't know how to
The
cook.
comparison.
You don't know how to,
Gosh.
and sometimes flippant. It's just said, and it's said over time.
Yeah.
And so, especially when it's coming from the adults in the room, like the uncles or parents and everything. How are you as a young people? Because you can't retort, you can't
You can't talk
throw
about
it
you
back.
can't no.
So you have to absorb it, and then you go away to uni, and all those things are playing in your mind. And so when you have issues like maybe academics don't go right, or you have issues with friends, how does that play? based on all the negative backgrounds that you've grown up with?
I think there's two elements to kind of what you've said. So I think there's the communication element of kind of like my parents' generation of not necessarily knowing how to communicate delicately. But then in terms of the content
That's
of what
one way
they're
to put it.
saying,
Guilty.
Delicately.
I know your dad.
Yeah.
but then there's also the aspect of the things they're saying. So I'll give the example of like, oh, you're too mouthy. I think that comes from a cultural norm of chattiness. In this part of the world where we're like an individualistic state, chattiness is celebrated. It's seen as a form of confidence. Whereas in the West, not West, like where
Africa.
the East, the African culture where we're from, it's seen as like a sign of disobedience or
Disrespect,
mischievousness. So there's a lot of unlearning that has to be done in terms of things that are okay in our culture, but things that are actually the mindsets that we have in our culture that are toxic. But then in terms of your question of how do I now deal with it,
You're still dealing.
I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think understanding that my parents come from a different generation is a huge thing. Most people my parents' age don't have that communication delicacy or don't have have those cultural norms. So I think it's just understanding of where they're coming from. Obviously, that doesn't change the fact that those negative things has been said and I now have to deal with it. And so I think I just try to not take it personally, and I just try to kind of make excuses on their behalf, because if I don't, that just builds up resentment, and that will make me have a negative perception towards my parents, and the whole thing just kind of becomes a cycle of negativity. So I think, to summarize, what I would say is just understanding that they're coming from a different time, different norms, different understandings of how to communicate and the impact of what they say. And then number two as well, just taking the time to unlearn those negative things. Like, I'm not a silly girl, I'm not stupid type of thing. In this day and age, they talk about positive manifestations or positive self-talk or, but it's a biblical concept, because the Bible literally says, let the weak say, I am strong. So you have to speak, life over yourself, and you have to surround yourself in environments where you are being where life is being spoken into. So that's what I was saying.
I do it a little bit differently. So if my parents say something that's kind of negative to me, to be fair, they've done a good way of always apologizing after like a day or two.
Oh, your parents are good.
They do after a day or two, like, that was wrong. I have to apologize for
That's
that.
good.
I think the part where it becomes bad is when somebody else repeats exactly what has been said by them. So you start to say, is that true?
Yeah.
Because if your parents said it to you and somebody else that hasn't met you for a while is able to say the same thing, you start to think, wait, maybe that's a problem. But the way I deal with it to kind of feel good is there are a lot of other Africans around. So we all, I don't know if it's a good way, but we laugh about it, because you share your story.
Trauma
bonding.
Blah 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 said this to me. Like, had the same thing. They said the same as well. Like, okay. So at that point, it's like, it's not just me. It's been said to
We're all in this together.
we're all in this together, and that kind of, in some way, it helps.
It does.
Yeah.
I think on behalf of the parents, we didn't know any better. We were brutalized. When I say brutalized, going to school, primary school, when you're late, you get six lashes at the gate, and there's mental arithmetic going on in the class. It starts when the bell goes. One mistake, 2 canes. And normally by the time I get there, it's number 6. So it means I've chalked 8 canes. Meanwhile, I took 6 at the gate. And now 8 is waiting for me. That's if I get all correct. And then close of day, you have spelling test. 1 mistake, 2 canes. And all that. And then you have all these And I mean, like, I have an immediate older brother who was always first. And because, as for you are so dense, you are so daft, you know, and because my brother will get 89% and cry that he didn't get 100.
Yeah.
So I thought, why try? Because whatever I do,
The
I can't be
impossible standard.
as good as him. So it means don't bother. So I didn't bother. I mean, we had 32 kids in the class. I start from 25. That's on the best day, it's 25 downwards. It's 25, don't laugh at me. You know, I always say to my kids, 25. And it was because I'm the youngest in the family, and all this negative was going. You're not clever. They used to call me OT because one of the don't ever call me that.
Never.
One of the days I was passed on trial. That I'm gonna go to the next class, the class 5, on trial for a month. That if I don't perform, they'll draw me back.
Wow.
You know,
probation.
Probation.
So my siblings just call me OT till this day. You know, and so that negative cycle is what we grew up on. So that's what we knew. And monkey see, monkey do. You also project on your kids without meaning to.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember one day I had a conversation with my daughter. My daughter's like, you can't say this to me. You can't say that to Kieran. You can't do this. You said this to that. I sat back. I was trying to defend myself. After a while, I sat back. I said, yeah, it's true.
I love that. We need to break the cycle. Let's just break the cycle. Let's stop explaining it away.
No, you can't explain
Don't
it.
explain it away.
It's like it's true.
Break
You
the cycle
can't.
now.
And I've seen it in other kids. I've seen it watch other kids who have, passed through. And I remember this particular young lady. She was a medical student as well from Nigeria. And one day she broke down in my office because I think she failed a paper. And she was thinking of ending it all because like the pressure from home, and she was trying to prove herself and she's having it, so she's dealing with pressure from home. We have spent all the money looking after you have to make sure you pass. That in the ear, and then teachers are also on her. She felt, I can't deal with this. And as we started talking, everything unraveled. You see, like suicide is not like she was saying, it doesn't start, it's a long-term thing.
It's a thing.
It's a lot of layers. Yeah. And you've got to peel all the layers because it was everything, not just that. When I was growing up, I was told I wasn't good enough. I wasn't this. Even to get here is a miracle. Now it's almost as if I'm this close and I'm failing. How do you cope with all those things? So
how do you cope?
It happens. And it starts from the mistake. That's why I asked the question. The mistakes we parents make in our ignorance, we put a lot of burden on you guys, and it's not fair. So I apologize on all.
Parents we have.
We could carry on. This discussion could actually go on. I feel like, but I hope that as you've watched, you've sort of heard something that you can run with, or you've heard something that you can give somebody to run with. The point is, I hope you've heard something that was worth your time. We will pause here. But you keep talking wherever you are. You keep having your conversations in your groups, in your small groups, in your church.
Questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can talk to us as well. You can send messages, to us. Yes, I think what we need is that conversation. That we've opened that avenue. So let's talk. Right. Talk helps. So nobody will judge you. Just let's talk so that we'll get it. We'll get there together.
Yeah. So contact details will be at the end of this video. And also we'll include professional avenues for support.
Yeah.
like I said, we aren't professionals. We just wanted to have this conversation, get the conversation going. You continue having the conversation where you are, and we'll be back soon to have more emotional anguish lifted. Take care. Bye.